All right, everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure to be here.
Today we're tackling something that seems so simple at first glance, but trust me, this one gets pretty complex. We're going deep on respect.
Yeah, it's like one of those words you hear all the time growing up, respect your elders, respect the law. But what does it actually, what does it actually mean?
Right, like we throw that word around so easily, but if you really stop and think about it, it's like, well, hold on a second. What are we really talking about
Yeah,
here?
exactly.
So that's where philosophy comes in, right? And luckily, you shared this fantastic entry with me from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, all about respect.
One of my favorites.
I figured, knowing you. And so we're going to use that as our guide today. And I think, for anyone who's interested in really understanding the deeper layers of this concept, this is going to be a fun one.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Because the entry starts by doing something I found really interesting. It points out that we use the word respect for a huge range of things. We respect people, obviously,
Right.
but we also talk about respecting, like, rules,
Institutions.
institutions.
Flags.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even the source mentions power tools, which I thought was a little strange, but
Yeah, well,
I
that's a really good example, actually.
is it? Okay, tell me why.
Because it sort of highlights, I think, one of the core distinctions philosophers make when they're talking about respect, which is it respect as a behavior or is it respect as an attitude?
Okay.
So, like, if you're using a power tool and you're following all the safety guidelines and being really careful, you could say, in a way, you're showing respect to the tool. You're respecting its power.
Hmm.
You're not going to just use it recklessly. But I think what philosophers are really interested in is respect as that internal attitude we have. It's like that judgment we make about whether something is worthy of our respect.
So, like, when we talk about respecting someone's opinion, even if we totally disagree with them, we're not necessarily saying their opinion is correct, right? It's more about how we're engaging with them with that idea.
Totally. It's about acknowledging that they have a right to have that opinion, to express it.
And even with, those power tools, I might be careful because I don't want to hurt myself. It's not necessarily about, some deep reverence for the drill itself.
Yeah, exactly. And this idea of attentive regard that the source mentions, it's about more than just noticing something, right? It's about acknowledging its importance, why it deserves our careful consideration.
Which makes me think about the word origin. Respect comes from the Latin rispusere, to look back at, to look again.
Hmm.
So there's this sense of not just glancing at something and dismissing it, but like giving it a second, more thoughtful look.
Yeah, a second look, but a specific kind of look, right? Because our respect is shaped by how we view the thing. Do we see it as morally important, practically useful?
Or, like you said, awe-inspiring. And that's going to change how we respond, how we show that respect.
Exactly. And the source actually lays out these different perspectives. You have moral respect, prudential respect, evaluative respect, and those are just a few.
Okay, so right off the bat, we've got all these layers. We've got respect as behavior versus attitude. We've got this attentive regard that's about, more than just seeing something. And then we've got these different reasons why we might respect something. But then just when I thought I was starting to get a handle on things, the source throws a curveball and says, hold on, there are actually different types of respect too.
Buckle up. Philosophers love their categories.
Oh, I'm learning that. So hit me with it. What are these different flavors of respect we're talking about?
Well, one philosopher, Joel Feinberg, he traced how the concept evolved historically. And he uses these great terms, respect, observantia, and reverentia, to describe three distinct types that they kind of build on each other.
Okay, hold on. Let's slow down for a sec. Those terms sound super intense. Break it down for me. What do they even mean?
All right, so think of respect as the most basic kind. It's that respect that's rooted in fear or caution towards something powerful or dangerous. It's the respect you might have for, like, a wild animal, a raging storm, even, a dictator with a lot of power.
So it's not necessarily admiration. It's more like, I recognize your power and I'm not going to mess with you. It's self-preservation almost.
Exactly. And observantia takes it a step further. We're still recognizing something's claim on us, but now it's a moral claim. It's the kind of respect we associate with human rights, seeing others as worthy of moral consideration simply because they're persons.
So with observantia, it's not about whether I like someone or agree with them. It's about acknowledging that they deserve to be treated with a certain level of decency just because they exist.
Precisely. And then we have reverentia, which is about awe and admiration for something truly exceptional. This is the respect you feel for, like a groundbreaking scientist, a musical virtuoso, or a breathtaking work of art.
So we've gone from fear-based respect to moral consideration to this recognition of like true excellence. It's almost like a hierarchy of respect.
But wait, didn't you say there were even more classifications?
You're right, there are. Another philosopher, John Hudson, took a different approach and focused on the grounds for respect, the qualities that make something worthy of it. And he came up with 4 types: evaluative respect, obstacle respect, directive respect, and institutional respect.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are these different grounds based on?
All right, so evaluative respect is pretty straightforward. It's about admiring someone's skills, talents, or moral character. Like the respect you might have for a colleague who's incredibly dedicated to their work, or an athlete who's pushing their limits.
So it's earned through demonstrating positive qualities or achieving something impressive. Makes sense. What about this obstacle respect? That one sounds kind of intriguing. Yeah, obstacle respect is fascinating because it's not about admiration at all. It's about recognizing something as a potential obstacle to your goals and treating it with caution, maybe even deference. Think about a mountain climber respecting the power of the mountain, or a chess player respecting their opponent's strategic skills.
So it's like acknowledging something that could really mess up your plans if you don't take it seriously. It's almost like begrudging respect.
Right. You may not like it, but you can't ignore it. Then we have directive respect, which is all about respecting rules, laws, or requests as guides to action. It's what we do when we follow those directives, even if we don't personally agree with them.
So it's the I'm going to follow the rules even if I grumble about it kind of respect.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the need for order and structure, even if it clashes with our personal preferences sometimes.
Exactly. And then lastly, there's institutional respect, which is about respecting social institutions, roles, and the people who occupy them.
So that could be showing deference to a judge in court, addressing a government official appropriately, or following traditional customs, like understanding the unwritten rules in the game,
You
right?
got it. And just to add even more complexity, another philosopher, Lisa Dillon, she adds a 5th category: care respect. And this one's rooted in a sense of deep concern, even cherishing for something, often seeing it as fragile or vulnerable. Think about an environmentalist's respect for nature or a parent's protective care for their child.
Okay, so we've gone from fear to admiration to obstacles, rules, and now care. My head is spinning with all these different types of respect.
Yeah, it can definitely feel overwhelming, but I think it just shows how rich and nuanced this concept really is. And all these classifications, they're just tools, ways for us to try and understand the many, many ways that we value and relate to the world around us.
It's like we're breaking down the ingredients of this really complex recipe called respect. But even with all this variety, there seems to be one ingredient that's at the heart of it all for philosophers, at least when they're talking about respect,
Huh.
and that's respect for persons.
That's right. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, but I think maybe we should give our listeners a moment to catch their breath. We've covered a lot of ground already.
Yeah, definitely. Take a minute, everyone, and think about these different types of respect. Which ones resonate with you the most? What examples from your own life come to mind? We'll be back in a moment to delve into the fascinating world of respect for persons. All right, so we've unpacked all these different flavors of respect, but now let's zoom in on what many philosophers see as like the core concept, respect for persons.
Right, that does seem to be where things get, really philosophically juicy. But what is it about respecting persons specifically that's so different from, respecting a law or respecting a mountain like we talked about earlier?
It all comes down to this idea that all persons deserve a certain kind of respect just because they are persons. It doesn't matter what their individual traits are or their achievements or even their moral character, really. It's about recognizing their inherent dignity and worth as, as beings that can think rationally, make choices for themselves, set their own goals.
So it's not about whether they're particularly talented or virtuous or anything like that. It's deeper. It's like acknowledging something fundamental about their very being.
Exactly. It's almost like saying that every human being has this basic right to be treated with dignity and consideration just by virtue of being human. And it's important to emphasize it's not about feelings. It's not about whether we like someone or approve of what they do. It's about recognizing their moral status, the moral constraints that come with being a person. Philosophers have a fancy term for this. They call it moral recognition respect.
Okay, so respect for persons is about recognizing their inherent worth and dignity, and this is a moral obligation we have to everyone, regardless of, who they are or what they've done. But wait, hold on a second. If we're talking about respecting them as persons, does that mean there's some debate about who actually counts as a person? Like, does this only apply to human beings, or could it go beyond our species?
You've hit on a really major philosophical debate there. I mean, we often use the terms person and human being interchangeably, but some philosophers really do argue for a broader or narrower scope.
So who gets included in this respect club, according to these different views?
Well, some argue that all and any human beings, no matter what, it doesn't matter their age, their mental capacity, even if they've done terrible things, they still deserve this basic respect because they're part of the human species. Others say, no, 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 respect is only owed to those who can themselves respect others. So maybe that would exclude infants or people with severe cognitive impairments.
Wow, those are some heavy questions for sure. It makes you think about what it really means to be a person and whether there even is one single clear-cut answer. What about extending personhood beyond humans, though? Like, intelligent aliens in a sci-fi movie, or even like a really, really advanced AI.
That's where things get, really wild. Some philosophers, they think personhood could include any being that has that capacity for rational thought or for moral agency, or even maybe certain kinds of social relationships. But on the other hand, you have some philosophers who want a much, much more restrictive view. Maybe they tie personhood to some very specific capacities or social structures that only humans have.
So the boundaries of who's in and who's out of this respect club, they can get pretty blurry. But even if we could all agree on, who deserves this respect, there's another big question: why? Why are persons, however we define that, morally worthy of this special kind of respect? Is there some kind of magical personhood gene that we all share that makes us worthy?
That is the million-dollar question. And many philosophers, they really do think there has to be some valuable quality that all persons share that makes us worthy of this respect. It's what grounds our duty to respect them. The problem is it's actually been incredibly difficult to find a quality that's truly present in all humans, let alone in any other potential persons out there.
It's like trying to find that one secret ingredient that makes every single dish in a diverse menu delicious. Maybe it doesn't even exist. But what are some of the contenders? What have philosophers proposed as, possible grounds for this respect?
Well, rationality is a really big one. The ability to think logically, make decisions, set goals. Others point to sentience, the capacity to experience feelings, sensations, that sort of thing. Some focus on the ability to form meaningful relationships. And then you have some that say, no, it's the capacity for moral responsibility itself. Whether we're good at it or not, that's what makes us worthy of respect.
So it's a real philosophical puzzle, trying to pin down this essence of personhood. But there's another even more radical idea out there that I came across in the source, and that's the idea that maybe we've been thinking about it backwards this whole time. What if respect isn't, a response to some pre-existing value in the person, but it's actually the act of respecting itself that confers moral standing and worth on them?
Yeah, that's a real head scratcher, isn't it? It's
Well,
suggesting that instead of respect being a reaction to some inherent value that's already there, it's the very act of respecting that creates that value in the first place.
so it's like respect is this magic wand that we wave at someone and bam, they become worthy of moral consideration.
It might sound kind of crazy, but that's actually what some philosophers are suggesting. It raises all sorts of really interesting questions about how we create meaning and value in the world through our interactions. But before we get, too lost in the existential weeds here, maybe we should try to ground ourselves in one of the most, really influential accounts of respect for persons, Immanuel Kant's theory.
Oh, yes. Kant, the big kahuna of respect. Let's what did he have to say about all of this?
Well, for Kant, respecting persons, it's like the very heart of acting morally. He even connects it to his famous categorical imperative, the idea that we should only act according to rules that we could want everyone to follow universally.
So respecting persons for Kant is like it's a universal moral law, something we should all strive for all the time, no matter what.
Exactly. And he was very, very clear about why persons deserve this respect. It's not because of the social status or their achievements or even their moral character. For Kant, true respect comes from recognizing this inherent dignity of all rational beings, what he called humanity.
So it's our capacity for rational thought and autonomous decision-making. That's what makes us worthy of respect. It's not about what we do. It's about our capacity to choose what we do.
Exactly. And he saw this humanity, this capacity for reason, as giving us, this intrinsic worth, regardless of our flaws or our mistakes. And respecting this dignity, for Kant, it means treating people as ends in themselves, never just as tools for our own purposes.
That's a really powerful idea. It means we shouldn't use people or exploit them just to get what we want. But instead, we should recognize their inherent value and treat them with consideration. But does that mean that even someone who has, done terrible things, that they still deserve this respect?
That is one of the more, let's say, radical implications of Kant's view. He would say that even the very worst person imaginable, they still deserve a basic level of respect as a person. We might, completely condemn their actions, but their capacity for rational thought, their humanity, as Kant called it, it remains.
That's a hard one to swallow, honestly.
Yeah.
But it speaks to the idea that respect, it's not something you earn or lose based on what you do. It's tied to something deeper about our nature as rational beings. It's like saying a diamond covered in mud is still a diamond at its core.
That's a great analogy. And to bring Kant's ideas down to earth a bit, he also distinguishes between what he calls negative duties of respect and positive duties of respect.
More categories. My philosophy brain is getting a real workout today. What's the difference there?
So negative duties, these are things we should refrain from doing out of respect. So it's about avoiding actions that harm people, violate their rights, or treat them as mere objects.
Basically, don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
Don't lie. Don't steal. Don't treat people like dirt. I got it.
Exactly. But positive duties, on the other hand, these are the things we should actively do to show respect. So this might mean helping other people achieve their goals, protecting their autonomy, creating conditions where they can actually thrive.
So it's not enough to just not harm people. We should also be actively supporting their well-being, their ability to make their own choices. But if we're supposed to be respecting everyone equally, does that mean treating everyone exactly the same? What about, people's individual needs and circumstances?
Oh, that's an excellent question. And it's something philosophers have, gone back and forth on for ages. Some would say that true respect actually involves tailoring your actions to the individual. It's not about this rigid, one-size-fits-all treatment. It's about recognizing that different people need different things to flourish.
So respecting someone as a person also means respecting their individuality, right? It's about recognizing their unique experiences, their perspectives, their values, even if those differ from our own.
Precisely. And this actually brings us to another fascinating aspect of respect, which is self-respect.
Yeah.
You can't really talk about respecting others without considering how we respect ourselves.
That makes a lot of sense. Self-respect just feels so essential for, living a good life. But it's one of those things, it's almost easier to feel intuitively than it is to really define clearly.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin to unpack that concept?
Yeah, it really does feel like self-respect is one of those, foundational pieces of a good life. But like you said, defining it clearly can be kind of slippery. It's about how we relate to ourselves, which sometimes I think can be even more confusing than how we relate to other people. Absolutely. And it's interesting because the Stanford Encyclopedia entry, it points out how much overlap there is between our everyday language about self-respect and how philosophers talk about it. We all seem to agree that it's important, maybe even, morally required in some way, and that lacking self-respect is it's not a good sign.
Right.
Right.
Saying someone has no self-respect, that's a pretty serious insult, right?
Right.
It implies they're making bad choices or letting people walk all over them.
Yeah.
But philosophers haven't just left it at that, common sense level. They've dug in deeper, asking, okay, what does it mean to respect yourself? How is that different from just, self-esteem or pride?
And just like with respect for others, they found that there are, different kinds of self-respect, which I think is really, really insightful. Makes us ask, okay, what exactly are we valuing about ourselves? And why?
Okay, so what are these different flavors of self-respect? How have philosophers, sliced and diced this concept?
Well, one really common distinction is between what they call recognition self-respect and then evaluative self-respect. So recognition self-respect, that's all about acknowledging your inherent worth as a person. It's very closely tied to that idea of dignity we were talking about earlier.
So it's like that voice in your head that's saying, hey, I deserve to be treated with respect,
Yeah.
just like anybody else.
Yeah.
Because I'm a person.
Yeah.
I have intrinsic moral worth.
Exactly. And this kind of self-respect, it plays a huge role in how we relate to others.
Yeah.
It helps us set boundaries, not tolerate mistreatment and really demand that our rights be recognized.
It's like having that backbone of self-worth so you don't let people push you around.
Then there's evaluative self-respect, which is more about judging your own character and actions based on your own personal standards. So it's less about your worth as a person in general and more about, what kind of person are you becoming through the choices you make.
So it's like looking in the mirror and asking yourself, am I living up to my own values? Am I making choices that I can be proud of?
Exactly. And this kind of self-respect can be a huge motivator for growth,
Yeah.
for self-improvement. It's what pushes us to strive for excellence, to live in alignment with our values, to become the best versions of ourselves.
Okay, so we've got these two main types. One based on inherent worth and then one based on kind of judging our actions. But do they always work together? Could they ever be in conflict?
Oh, absolutely, for sure. I mean, imagine someone who has a very strong sense of recognition, self-respect. They know they deserve to be treated well no matter what. But maybe their actions, they don't match their own moral standards. So they're struggling with that evaluative self-respect.
It's like you have a high opinion of yourself generally, but then you're also kind of ashamed of some of the choices you're making. That's got to be a tough place to be.
For sure. And you could have the reverse too, right? Someone might be very disciplined. They live up to their own, very high standards, but they let other people treat them poorly. So that might suggest they're lacking in that core recognition, self-respect.
So it seems like you kind of need both, right? For a well-rounded sense of self-worth.
Yeah.
You need that foundation of recognizing your own inherent dignity, but also the self-awareness to make choices that align with your values.
Yeah, absolutely. And if we want to get even more complex, the source even mentions further distinctions within these categories. For example, some philosophers, especially those following in Kant's footsteps, they break down recognition, self-respect into three facets. Respect for our equality with others, respect for our agency, and then respect for our individuality.
Whoa. Three facets. Okay, hold on. Let's slow down for a second. What does it even mean to respect our equality with others when we're talking about self-respect?
Well, it's about recognizing that you have the same moral worth and dignity as everyone else, regardless of your status or your achievements or even your moral track record. It's about seeing yourself as part of this human community where everyone deserves that basic level of respect.
So it's like that feeling of I'm no better or worse than anyone else just by virtue of being human.
Yeah.
It's a good antidote to, arrogance or thinking you're superior to other people.
Exactly. Then respecting your agency, that's about acknowledging your ability to make choices, to think for yourself, to be the author of your own life, really. It means taking responsibility for your actions, both the good and the bad.
It's about feeling empowered, not like you're just being, blown around by fate or the whims of other people.
Right. And then finally, respecting your individuality. That means valuing what makes you you. Your unique talents, your passions, your perspectives. It's about embracing those differences and expressing yourself authentically in the world.
It's like celebrating that inner spark. Instead of, trying to fit into some mold or live up to somebody else's expectations. This is fascinating. It's like all these different threads of self-respect, they're weaving together to create this stronger, more resilient sense of self-worth.
It really is. And I think, thinking about all these different facets, it can help us figure out, where we might be struggling with self-respect and what we can do to cultivate it more fully in our lives.
This has been such an incredible deep dive. We've explored so much the many different ways we can respect things, the philosophical puzzles around personhood, the challenges of respecting others and ourselves. It's amazing how much there is to say about this concept that we, use so casually in everyday life.
Yeah, and what's especially fascinating to me is how this concept of respect in all its forms, it almost acts like this kind of glue that holds things together. It binds us to each other, to society, even to ourselves. It's about recognizing worth, it's about setting boundaries, it's about navigating all these relationships with dignity and consideration.
It really makes you wonder what would a world look like where respect was truly the guiding principle? How would our interactions be different? Our institutions? even our own internal dialogues with ourselves?
That is a powerful question, and it's one that each of us can really only answer through our own actions and choices, day by day.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into respect, we leave you with that challenge, listener. How will you choose to cultivate respect in your own life and in the world around you? Keep thinking, keep questioning, and keep diving deeper into the world of ideas. We'll see you next time.